1, go!
Welcome to the Set Count, your source for tournament results, storylines, and analytics set to the tune of your speakers. I'm your host, MBG Vayseth. Also this week, somewhat lonely, as we only have 2 people again this week. I'm joined by PG Suar.
Hi everyone, sorry for being out last week. I don't even remember what happened.
You know, well, the PGR happened, that's why.
Oh yeah! Yeah, wow, I can't believe it happened. I guess, Friday the top 10 was revealed? That's crazy.
Yeah, so it's all done, it's all out there. Obviously, we'll use this opportunity to talk about all that since you're here, and we can do that. And Sage, unfortunately, missed his move. He just came back from Arm Saga. I think they have a farewell tournament for him tomorrow. Our time.
They do. It looks so good.
Yeah, I think it's Wednesday. Ignition will be like a farewell to Sage tournament, and then he'll be moving out. So saying goodbye to a lot of people. Big move. Lots of changes for him. So he has the week off. So it's just us 2. We're going to talk about the PGR, wrap it up, put a nice little ribbon on it, talk about what was good, what was bad, kind of clear up some misconceptions. And then I'm going to go to EVO, and like that's just what's going to happen. I'm just literally going to leave and just go straight to EVO from here. So
Yeah, I'm Jelly Bonelli, but there's plenty of tournaments this year, and I'll be watching from the sky, so it'll be like being there almost, but not at all.
yeah, for sure. So we want to remind everyone that the tournament tier system was finished for Season 4, so we will be bringing back the numbers as originally planned, so we will have that segment back this week, and then we'll talk about the PGR, we'll answer a Runback question, and then we'll get out of here. So, unless you got anything else to say, Suar.
No, well, let's get the show on the road.
Alright, it's time for the number.
It's time for the numbers.
I really hope you can give me the numbers clip. For reference, Sage has all our assets for all the things that aren't our voices. So hopefully he's here, able to give it to me so I can edit it in, since I'll be editing this week's episode as well, since Sage is completely indisposed. But really quick numbers. I know it's been a while. Things have been a little crazy. Tournaments happened in between the ending of CEO to the release of the PGR. Maybe, wink wink, nudge nudge, we need an off-season to do work like that. But whatever, life goes on. We had tournaments during that time that I didn't cover, I'm sorry, but we know what they are. But for last weekend, the weekend of July 8th and 9th, we actually had a couple things going on. Starting with Divided in Miami, Florida. 166 entrants, which was won by Static Manny. Really funny, quick story. Or not Static Manny, sorry, Manny. / All Might / Oni Hero. Divided was like a Florida thing where like South Florida and Central Florida were duking it out, and
Yeah, some sort of like crew battle.
Yeah. Like the whole
salty,
theme,
sweet crew battle.
Yeah,
thing.
the whole theme was like who's gonna win, and then Manny's from Tampa, which is like in the Panhandle, and he won. So it's like basically
yeah, like neither region.
Yeah,
won.
it's kind of like Civil War, like Ally and Zero just completely out the door, and then some random dude wins, the Buzz, whatever. So yeah, congrats to Manny for taking it. Don't You Dare 7 in Hayward, California. 140 people taken by Legit and his DiddyCon. Ascension 2 in Farmington Hills, Michigan. Is MI in Michigan? Oh, Jesus.
That is correct.
Okay. I don't know. Like, yeah, okay, whatever. 106 people. 6WX showing up with a Sonic. 6WX actually recently announced as a day ago being Monday, July 10th, that he's a free agent, so be on the lookout for that. So congrats,
Man,
6.
Does Circa have any Smash players anymore?
I don't know. I don't really know much about Circa, to be honest with you.
They used to have Supergirl Kells, if I remember correctly, and I know they used to have Suicune Master. Like, they've been dropping players like crazy.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, well, that's Drama Llama for another time.
Yeah, that was in Michigan, and it was actually pretty interesting because 6WX beat Zenodo to win that tournament.
Oh, look at that.
And the last stock was particularly flashy. It was some down air shenanigans with Sonic to actually take the tournament. So
I think
yeah, it was
right
cool.
after Ken, 6 has my most favorite Sonic to watch, easily.
Oh yeah,
I just love their styles of like in-your-face technical aggression.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, then Gump 16, which is this Natick, Massachusetts regional that Mars has taken every single one except like one or two, and the ones he didn't take, he was out of town or I think he had a cold. So congrats to Mars taking over 100 solid people. And then lastly, Arm Saga. You know, that one thing that's going on. Santa Ana, California, DeBuzz taking it over 200 people. Obviously beating Zero to get it. Congrats to DeBuzz.
Twice, beating Zero twice in the tournament.
Yeah, beating Zero twice, of course, in winners and in grands. You know, honestly, silencing a lot because he got a lot of flack for the PGR because he didn't really attend anything after Civil War. Then he went to CEO, got 9th. People saying he's washed. And he did this. So that's kind of funny. I think, like, if we did the PGR right now with, like, 2 events, like, he might be, like, number 1 or number 2. So it's like people are so ready to just say Zero's washed, even though when the PGR came out, Zero has, like, a 1,000 to 2 set count against the entire world. But whatever.
Yeah.
We digress. But yeah, that's the numbers.
The only shots that I think we can legitimately call is out of the Rosalinas that have beat Zero, Fallen's only beat him once and then didn't win the tournament. DeBuzz won the tournament, beat Zero twice, but lost a set in the process, whereas Kirihara beat Zero twice without losing a set. So, who's really the best Rosalina?
Yeah, I think that's so interesting that Zero just has a Rosalina problem. I mean,
like, if you look into it, like, we talk about a lot of players having an X character problem or whatever, and if you look at it historically, Zero has struggled with Mario mains and Rosalina mains, so...
Yeah, and it's odd because, like, I mean, DeBuzz beat everyone else that day, so they all had a Rosalina problem, but in particular, 3, various level Rosalinas, probably DeBuzz being the best one, Kirihara coming in hot second, and then Fallen being a little bit, obviously amazing, but there's a gap between him and Kirihara, you know what I mean? And to see Zero have a problem with each of them is just interesting. But yeah, that was it. 712 people registered for our thresholds last weekend, so that's nice to have these numbers going into EVO. Always nice to have all this competition going. Obviously, for tournaments that didn't hit 100, they still happened. We just didn't really look into them. So competition all around, still pretty good. 2.5 years after the game release. So congrats to everybody.
Yeah, and if you check at the PG stats on Twitter, you can see the new article for the tournament tier system, what changed, what didn't, and you can see what tournaments are already on there. As far as, I think there's an S tier tournament, an A tier tournament, and then a couple B's and C's, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, there's only about like 5 or 6 right now. We're still in the process of updating, but without getting too much into it, we can leave that for another episode. We changed the tournament tier system. The tournament tier system is just what we have as our insurance and our map and compass for the PGR type sanctioned events. And so there's like categories for entrance and prize money and different top player levels on the PGR, and tournaments get awarded points for having certain things, and they get rated as S, A, B, or C tier events. So obviously all the legacy tournaments pretty much are guaranteed S tier. EVO is going to be a super S tier. And that's really like how we're able to talk about like, oh, these wins, or oh, these sets matter, like a lot more here than they do there, and placements matter. For perspective, getting 49th at an S tier event pretty much counts for the same amount of points as getting first at a C tier event. So you kind of see you kind of see like the differences. And anytime people are like, oh my god, Civil War pools is like winning a regional, it's like, yeah, I mean, it is. Like,
right.
Just to get out of pools and regional is about the same amount of work as winning a regional, which is not really that hard for most people, or obviously just top players, I meant. Winning a regional is hard. But, the people that win regionals win with only maybe like 1-2 PGR players present, max, and then everybody else are like hidden bosses or the regionals, or the region's champs. But again, like, it's not like 50 PGR players, 40, 30 like CEO, EVO, the sagas. So that's just sort of perspective, and it came up, but we'll get into that. But yeah, that was pretty much it for the numbers in that. Ready to sort of do the debrief on the PGR?
Yeah, let's get it done.
Cool. So, for everybody that is anybody, you probably saw for the past 2 weeks the PGR get released. A lot of buzz, obviously. Every time this thing comes out, it changes the Smash economy for better or worse for about 2 weeks. A lot of contention, a lot of thoughts, a lot of buzz, and I want to just say, first of all, thanks to the team. The team grew to like I think 20 people at one point, unofficially and official. So many people came together to make what you saw. The player cards by Fiasco and Keith, the thumbnails by Spike. You had Paradin and Suinoko being a Japanese native working on the subtitling for the YouTube videos, which was so clutch. And they had to be delayed because, acts of God and crazy stuff that we were trying to be ambitious with. So if anything was ever delayed, it was my fault, not theirs. Paradin and Suinoko have an incredible work ethic. Vayseth can probably vouch for them because he's worked with them on different things before. They're incredible people. Incredibly talented people.
Yeah, Suinoko's very, very involved. He's the one who made the what Evo players or what Japanese players are going to Evo spreadsheet with Juddy. So like he's pretty involved.
Yeah, involved, dedicated, selfless, informative, just awesome people. We had practical tasks, essentially really tinker with like our methodology to make it what it was. We were really proud of it. Giant, obviously, creating the database for like all these things to be indexed. All the data we were moving, like by the pound, was insane. Anyone else that I forgot to mention is just because there's just so many people. All the writers, Poppy, Dom, Mayday, everyone, just thank you so much. They did amazing work. And when you have all those people sort of like that you're working with and something goes wrong, like it's your fault being my fault as like the person directing the whole show. And so if there was anything that ever happened, it was my fault. Anything that was good that happened was their fault. But for the most part, I'm just really proud of everybody and also proud of the people who made it. I think that, like compared to the other iterations, like a lot of people were proud to be on this one in like the 30 to 50 range. And that was really heartwarming to see. You have obviously, they're 31st or they're 40th, whatever, but like it's still at the top of the world, the 1%, and these people have been known to take sets off like the very top to win stuff. We even have like Charlie the King, who is probably gonna land if he continues this work like easily in the top 50 next season. He just went to Arm Saga and destroyed Abadango, destroyed like all these people. Went to Game 5 with 0 last hit. Like what? Some SoCal
right,
Fox,
yeah.
like crazy stuff, And that sort of stuff is important to like validate, to like keep track of. And so, AC, Falco Meta Knight main, who made a run at Civil War, who beat MK Leo, very quietly, and it was early, but he beat MK Leo, who's the second rated best player in the world right now. You had that sort of stuff happen. You had Fallen be on all 3 PGRs, but getting higher and higher each time, which is like a really awesome measure of progress. Same thing for Fatality. Fatality starting in the low 30s, going into the mid 20s, going to now 15th. Like all this stuff is just a celebration in the end, and I'm just so happy that everybody gets to take part in it. Like Fatality set as his goal, like I want to be top 15, like I know I can do it, and he did it. And he retweeted that old tweet, and it's just like wow. But yeah, and then you have like the top 10 coming together as like a new entity. Some veterans, obviously. You have Mr. R being on the top 10 3 times in a row. Abadango, Larry Lur, Void falling out for the first time. Anti falling out for the first time. Como in for the first time. And that's just awesome to see. Captain Zach, same thing. And then DeBuzz, Naira, Zero, obviously being there 3 times. And MK Leo now being there twice. MK Leo being 19th on the first PGR. Isn't that crazy?
Right. Yeah.
Or 18th or whatever. I don't even remember. But yeah, really, really cool stuff. How did it look like to you when you saw the buzz after the fact, Vayseth?
So are we talking about like how is the PGR this season as opposed to seasons past or opposed to other things? Because basically, when I look at it, I look at what's going on, and I look at what I can do, or what's in front of me. And what's in front of me is I can look at Season 1 to Season 3, and I can look at Season 2 to Season 3, and I can see significant jumps, not only in production value...
That's so funny!
In, like...
If you look at the player cards from each season, it's like...
Oh, yeah.
It's like...
Yeah.
It's so funny.
If you guys want... Yeah, it is actually quite horrific. You should probably relive that. But not just in production value, but in, as you sort of mentioned, like legitimacy. It's definitely shot up a lot. It means a lot more to more people. And if you were to compare it to anything else that's even close to comparable, I guess you would put those Japanese power ranking videos, like if that's even a close, fair comparison. I mean, like, they're 10 to 15 minute long videos that do a ranking system. So I guess they're similar in that respect. And if you look at them, like, there's definitely a lot of cool space that people are playing with now, and the PGR is starting to have some competition. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but, like, you can definitely see how to use this sort of ranking, let's release slowly over time videos, and, like, how that affects the scene. And both rankings have been extremely popular, extremely well received by the community. The Reddit threads about them are always blowing up.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, like, everyone's always talking about them, and it's kind of like what you've said the whole time, Suar. Like, if people didn't care, no one would be talking about it.
Yeah, and that's something that I really want to stress too. Like, we'll talk about at the end of one of the points for the discussion of the PGR with, like, the whole death of Yahoo eSports. But for what it's worth, like, I love the Japanese PR. I don't think it's competition necessarily. We're not competing for the same thing. They're doing Japan. We're doing everybody. But you can really see how, like, oh, you know, Choco's on theirs and Choco's on ours. You know, there's, like, a lot of similarities.
Well, I didn't even mean about the rankings. I'm just talking purely production value.
Oh, production, they are light years ahead in that aspect. But in terms of, like, release and, like, the networking, we're, like, on the other side of things. You know what I mean? So if we fused together, it would be broken. And I actually do want to talk to whoever made those videos, because honestly, like, that needs to happen, because, like, holy wow.
Yeah, Coder's really good.
Amazing.
You can actually go to his YouTube page, and last year he did a preview video for who was going to EVO, and they're in the exact same style as this power ranking. So if you like the ones that Haruki and Coder are putting out, you can look up actually Coder's YouTube page himself, and let me grab that for you because I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's
link in the description is kind of like not the podcast thing. So let me actually
it's
read to you what to look up.
CODER, so it's maybe Cooter or Coder, whatever, but it's 2 O's. But the guy's a god. I mean, if you haven't seen the Japanese PR videos, please look at them. They're on YouTube, they're on Reddit, on Twitter. They're not hard to find. But basically, they take, like, these thematic instances of, like, the things players have done and, like, kind of do their own rendition of it in the game. So, for example, like, Hikaru's victory screen. Also, everything is, like, Smash themed. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's easy if they have the soundboard. But they got all the sounds for Smash of the menu sounds, the trophy breaking sounds. Notable wins are, like, getting trophies from, like, the game itself. And
the ching, ching, ching.
Like, it's so funny how they did everything. It was so imaginative. It was such a concept. And everybody has, like, a victory screen where it says, congratulations. And Hikaru, he had beaten Sue at Civil War, and after he did that, like, Sue, like, went on stage, or, like, in front of the setup, and, like, kind of, like, fake fainted. Like, damn, I lost. And he's on his back, and Hikaru is taunting. And so there's this picture of them where Sue's on the floor, and Hikaru's taunting, like, DK, and they actually put a screenshot of Lucario on the floor with DK taunting, and that's his congratulations screen. So the references are so funny.
And Sue's congratulations screen is a
Frostbite.
Lucario in the Freezy. What do you call
the Freezy? It's called the Freezy.
It is called the Freezy. Yeah, he's like stuck in the Freezy
Mr.
with like that
Freezy
weird
or something.
animation. Yeah, and they did that, and they actually used it from the game. Like if you won with this character, you know, you get like a crazy like video, and like they really took it straight from the game. It's cool. So I did look it up.
Yeah.
The guy's name is Kuda, Kuda. His Twitter is at COODER_SSB4. So Coder or Cooter_SSB4. On his Twitter, which he only has 68 followers. Like, come on, or it could be a she. Actually, I found out that a prominent Smash 4 community member in Japan is a female, and I did not know that at first because I had never met them. I just assumed, and you know what happens when you do that.
Male-dominated society.
I will definitely say that this person It only has 68 followers, so please go on at COODER_SSB4. Follow them. Their YouTube link is there, and you can go there and you can see this five-part video that sort of it broke down all of the players who went to EVO 2016, and they're done largely in the same style. They're about half as long. They're only about 4 minutes each. So if you have a moment and you can see kind of like this person's resume on like what videos have they done for not only for EVO but for the Japanese power rankings that Haruki has been publishing. They put in good work. So definitely, it was an exciting season. Not just like this was a exciting surprise that came out of nowhere to sort of like almost like reaffirm the PGR. You know, like there's so many Japanese players that made it onto the PGR, so it was cool to have this as well.
Oh, definitely, and like addressing the whole like, well, why do you guys release like? Why don't you just do it all at once? Or why don't you just release it all 5 days in a row? Or why do you make videos? Why do you make articles? And that's where the sort of PGR, like, I guess, model has really taken hold with a lot of the community. It's a power ranking, right? So it's not necessarily special by design. However, it's a global one, so now that's a little harder. But it's a celebration and also a catalog for not only teams and outside people, but for anybody, like anybody looking at the scene. This EVO, for top 8, PGR win, PGR Panda Global Ranking, PGR player, whatever, will probably be said 3 to 4 times per set. And that is really just a narrative we've been able to establish. And I like the example of like Zenodo and Ned, right? Zenodo is the best player in the Midwest. Ned is the second best. If you saw him at a tournament, whether it was regional or national, and blah, 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 you get on commentary and you say, oh, well, Ned's the second best in the Midwest, Zenodo's the first best, blah, 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 blah. But if you were to then learn that they're both on this global ranking, and Zenodo is like 15-odd people ahead of Ned, now you can sort of like actually touch the gap and be like, oh, wow, there's an actual gap. And so anything that Ned does that ends up being positive is that much more impressive. And anything that happens to Zenodo is that much more dire because there's all these expectations on them.
And it also just shows like how high level the Midwest is as well.
Exactly. But again, if it was first and second, that's like, oh, well, whatever. You know, Ned's probably just as good as him. They probably trade. But no, on a global scale, Ned is pretty behind compared to Zenodo. Still up there, but there's a gap. And that's really established through this like global narrative. And then the other part too is like we give each part of the PGR its chance to shine. Like if we release the top 50 in a text file, Reddit would clamor over the top 10 the entire time. Nobody would look at 50th. Nobody would look at anything.
That's a really good point.
Over 10, and it would just drown out. And it's like if you were Foe, well, I mean, I know that Foe is too happy to be 50th, but you know he did do some crazy stuff that netted him that. But if you were Choco, right? If you were Choco, you wouldn't get recognized until maybe later. You know, if you were AC, same thing. If you were Myron, if you were MVD, like people that are like in the middle, in the upper half, you know, and even people in the top 20, like. You know, like Fatality, like nobody would talk about that because they're all focused on the top 10, they're focused on the top 5, all that stuff. And so it's blown out, right? But when you release it in parts, you give that discussion, you give that spotlight, it's moderation, it's like piecemeal. You know, you don't get all your dinner all at once, you know, you get it in courses. And so for anybody who's been wondering, like, oh, it annoys them, like, I don't really mind that. That's fine. That means that you don't have self-control. But for everybody else, they get to enjoy it. You know, they get to enjoy like, all right, it's not today, it's tomorrow. I gotta wait, and you get to digest. You get to read about Choco for a little bit. You get to look at his sets. All of a sudden, now you want to main Zero Suit Salmon. Like that can happen when you have it in parts, and it's also just healthy for content release.
Yeah, that was huge, especially since there was like Reddit threads for every single one of these. Obviously, I don't know if
I
you
made
created
them
or not, but like, yeah, But in the comments, almost always you would have people going like, each player that was nominated at that time, there'd always be a comment of like Twitter reactions from said player.
I love that. Like, I love that. There was, I think,
we wouldn't
Kaneki,
have that stuff.
Yeah, Kaneki, a really great Smash Redditor. Kaneki, Bernard's Loop, and Freezy Kyo were like really all over like player reactions, capturing moments that happen. with the PGR online, giving their opinions, giving all this other stuff. And I think Keneki or someone else was posting their reactions of what happened when they found out. And the cool thing is that there was a delayed reaction for Japan, because we would release anywhere in the afternoon in the US, and in Japan that's like the morning. So
it's like very early in the morning.
Yeah, or they haven't woken up. So everybody here would freak out, and then hours later, everybody over there would freak out when it was like midnight for us. And that was part of the reason why we really wanted subtitles. We had to make this accessible. I think that with the subtitles, there was like the added benefit of anybody in Japan learning about non-Japanese players as well as like being able to celebrate their own. And that was important. And, you know, that was really cool to see them also react. And like all the Japanese players that were newcomers, like Raito and T and all of them and Sue, they were so happy to be on it. They'd be like, I got 16th or I got 17th or whatever. Those are random numbers because neither 16th or 17th are Japanese, I don't think. Or maybe, whatever, I can't remember. But, you know, Raito was in the upper 30s. 31 through 40 was basically Florida, Japan. 31 was 6WX, and then 32 to 35 was like T, Hikaru, Shuton, like all those crazy heavy hitters that basically made that splash at Frostbite, and they were all so happy. So that was awesome. But anyways, you know, staggering them through days, having all the content on Reddit, having all the content on Twitter. That was the other thing too. Like, anytime the release happened, you had two different worlds. You had Twitter happening, and you had Reddit happening. There might have been Smashboards, to be honest, I didn't go on it, sorry. But, you know, for the most part, that's where anybody got to dish out their opinions, you know? And one thing I do want to note this time around, nobody argued the placings, they just argued the context of the placings. When we set it out the other two times, people were like, this person's too high, this person's too low, this is trash. This time, with all the improved methodologies and data being out there, and all these other things being transparent, nobody argued the placings. They just argued like, oh wow, I'm surprised Wadi is so low, but I understand why Wadi is so low.
Right. That was another thing when we want to talk about, you know, how you guys did compared to other seasons or compared to other rankings. And this year, at least on that front, you guys knocked it out of the park.
Thanks. I mean, that was, and we had to, you know, we had to make that formative step, because the more you go on without like hard numbers behind it, the less likely it is to be accepted at one point where it's like, all right, this is clearly fixed, or this is a gaffe, right? So we made such efforts to like really transform the methodology. Practical tasks, just amazing. The 50-50 split between set counts and placements was just so important, and nobody can disagree with it because it was 50-50. There's arguments for having placements count. Count more. There's arguments for having set counts count more. Both sides are wrong, both sides are right. But when you do 50-50, everybody wins, right? So
yeah,
that
and
was,
like keep
that
in mind
awesome.
that like I know I've told you this. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on the show, but at Genesis 4, I was speaking to like the tippity top of Melee after Genesis, and a lot of them, especially Hungrybox, like mentioned that they really enjoyed the PGR because unlike the Melee on Me rankings, like they're based in like raw data and not so much opinions, which Melee and On Me is mostly like the opinions of a committee.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Like, and the Melee and On Me ratings sort of determine where these gods fight each other. So it can kind of like, it's so important for them because they're going to get seeded largely based on this in a lot of ways. So if one of the 4 currently active gods has a hard time against another one, depending on where they place 1 through 4, can either give them easy brackets for the year or hard, impossible brackets for the year.
Yeah, and that's a lot, and that's its own animal, you know, because like the Melee On Me rankings are culturally different than the than the Smash
I'm not
4
saying
rankings.
like one is better than another, but I just always thought
yeah.
it was interesting that like because it's based in raw data and whatnot, like even the Melee gods were saying like, good shit, PGR. Like, and so
yeah, and I
you know
get
you had
that.
something special like when Volume 2 announced, and like you had that reaction. Now with Volume 3, where like everybody's accepting it and talking about it, now you're definitely onto something.
Yeah, and I think like I was talking to Tass about it, and I was like, yo, like, you know, how does Melee On Me, like, how do people like take it in the Melee community? Like, oh, they love it or they hate it, but it's different. Like, no one wonders who the top 10 are in Melee because it's so established. Like, you have the 5 gods or the 4 active gods and then the demigods, and that's it. But Smash, like, look at Smash 4. It's so volatile. After 0, it is truly volatile. The household,
I guess 0, and you can almost basically say that Leo is solidly number 2.
Yeah, and that was obvious from the moment CEO started. But, you know, like, there's no situation in Melee where you have a top 10 player not become a top 10 player after a year, like Anti, you know? And that is one of the more interesting stories of the PGR. This season, it's obviously really touchy because he's got so many emblazoned fans. But, you know, he didn't necessarily acknowledge it on Twitter that he came out as 21st. I understand that. For optics and whatnot, it's really hard to be like, I'm 21st in the world after being top 10 2 times. But that doesn't happen in Melee, so the need for rankings or the need for like such exhaustive rankings are a little lower. But I understand their appeal for someone like HBox in them. But yeah, I mean, this time around, like, it was solidly like, yeah, this person is that. Here's their data, look it up. And people were like, yeah, I can't argue this. You know, I can argue maybe the methodology, but after that, like, now like, it is funny, okay? Because this time around, there's a lot of, like always, like, here's my top 50 predictions. If they got that far. Usually they only did top 20 or top 30. And people, after doing it for, like, 10 minutes, are like, wow, this is hard. I'm like, yeah, it is. It's really hard. You know? And so, whereas we have a system for it now, like, yeah, you can't just say it or make it up at this point. But, yeah, really great improvements there. The other thing I wanted to touch on, too, was the fact that, you know, the X Factor, obviously, a lot of criticism, but X Factor's kind of like immune to a lot of stuff because it's subjective, so it doesn't affect anything. It's just kind of like, here's what people think about you. But the X Factor's probably always wrong anyways, because every week something crazy happens. So, for example, Issa beat DeBuzz during PGR release, so obviously his X Factor changes. But the X Factor survey was completed and returned before Naira Saga and CEO, which obviously when you're looking at it, you're like, why would you guys do that before 2 S-tier events? Well, you know, motherfucker, like, they weren't S-tier events when the survey went out, so that happens too in this crazy community of crazy tournaments happening all the time.
That is true. They were super last minute S-tier events. Like, nobody saw that coming at least a month out.
Yeah, like CEO, you know, you could imagine it at least, but it was looking A for a while, alright? It was looking A for a while. And then Naira Saga, like, again, just like, alright, we're S tier. Like, he just tweeted it. He didn't even talk to me. He's like, alright, we're S tier starting today. And I was like, alright, well, damn. So, obviously, crazy things happened there. I mean, Foe literally came out of nowhere. He wasn't even in the 100 that we had sent out on the survey based on placements, because he had no placements aside from Civil War. But he did well at Naira Saga. Myron, same thing, did well at Naira Saga and CEO. Well, yeah, he had done well at those, but he hadn't done well enough to like make top 50. But he killed it at Naira Saga and CEO. But his opinions beforehand were like, okay, he's pretty good, but he's not top 50, which was reflected in an X factor of -39. But again, it's like, well, okay, so here's what we do. We sent out the survey after CEO. Okay, well, now we need at least a week or two because Smashers are slow to respond, / there's time for, like, processing and all this other stuff. And now we're bleeding into CEO. Now we're delaying 2 weeks. Like, we literally finished last Friday. EVO is this week. We could not
And, like, that for you, that's a huge timeline.
Not even for me, for everyone on the list. Like,
right.
Like,
no, you need to get it out in time for EVO because it's such a huge spectacle.
It would be a catastrophic failure if we had to delete, or if we had to release after EVO. Maybe not in the eyes of some people, but if you're able to say a new top 10 name on the EVO grand stage, that's so big. Because if you were talking about last season still, when it was EVO, it's like so inaccurate. You know what I mean? And that's the other part. It's like the biannual aspect. Because in Melee and On Me, a bad ranking hangs over you for like a year. Even though now they've been starting to do the summer rankings and stuff.
Yeah, they're doing like the summer rankings with Red Bull.
Yeah. And that's cool. But like, you know, we also do biannual. And it's important because if you had it for a year, I mean, damn, like, that's a long time. And so many things happen. Like, Anti had been struggling since the beginning of January. Genesis, everything had been a struggle since then, so he arguably wasn't even top 10 then, but he was regarded as top 10 all season. So, we can't have a year of that because it's inaccurate. And then again, Leo wasn't number 8 this whole time. He'd been number 2 practically since Genesis when he won. So just like a lot of little things like that people just don't think about the systemic issues. People really just want what they want.
Well, Leo was on fire even into season 2. Like, how many people
Zero
won?
Saga.
Like,
yeah.
Like, Leo's just insane. He's just unstoppable, and I don't know. Like, I've seen him win tournaments all over the place, and he's definitely somebody to watch at Evo. I know I don't believe he was at Arm Saga.
He wasn't.
Like, he was probably at Foxconn and like relaxing and just getting ready. I know he was talking about it. Yeah, I know, just like talking about it when we were in Japan together. He was just like, Vayseth, you have to go to Evo. It's important. Like, that's the tournament, and I know he's been super hyped up for it. So yeah, I don't like. That's just not just Leo. Like, yeah, Leo's on my team, so I have these conversations with him. But like it's a big deal for almost everybody in the top 10. The exposure is huge, so it was unacceptable to get that out after Evo. Is the point of the story?
Yeah, it's just sort of been bad. I mean, like D1, or sorry, I don't know if that's even spoiling it, but I imagine D1 with top 8 commentary or top 16 at one point. But he, we're talking already about the resources he's going to get from me because he wants to put our...
Well, I guess when this show comes out, it'll be Friday, so...
Oh, yeah. Okay, so D1's doing top 8. Surprise, surprise. And so he obviously wants to put his best foot forward for the community, and with that, he needs to be well-read. So he's asking me already, like, hey, Suar, like, I need... I'm going to need this data. I want to say this about them. And I'm like, D1, I got you. That's fine. But again, like when they go on Evo main stage and they have this top 8 going on and they're able to talk about like Komercury's region, Komercury's wins, Komercury's placements, Captain Zach's placements, Captain Zach's set count, Captain Zach's everything. When I watch other games in the FGC, not even to dock them, but like, Mortal Kombat, for example, last year, I mean, they're a great community, great set of people. It's the Injustice NRS community, really. But, they don't have the same resources. They don't have the same community behind them. They don't have a PG stats.
Most don't, actually.
Well, yeah, most don't. But they have other things, too, which kind of compensates. But there's, like, a growing trend towards moving towards more elevated commentary, towards the stuff that you see in Dota and CSGO. Like, you watch commentary for them, and it is crazy. They have writers, So...
Well, you need historians, and luckily Smash has that. At least modern Smash, since the documentary, I think that sort of made Smash into what it is today. Like, let's be honest. Like, and
exactly.
That was 100%. Somebody looked at the history of this game and went, "This means something to me, and it should mean something to other people, and I'm going to make sure that this is saved and immortalized." And that sort of like created Smash into where we are today, and like that's why we have such high standards. Like, there aren't these documentaries for these smaller scenes because like they just don't have that storied history,
Yeah, and I think there is a Street Fighter documentary, definitely. There is another one as well. But Smash is just full of fanatics, and it's kind of what's awesome and awful at the same time. But, it really pushes these things forward to heights that other communities can't even pretend to be at. So, yeah, before EVO, this is going back to why the X Factor was the way it was. If you're upset over someone's X Factor, I can't really help you.
I mean, like, I actually kind of thought that was cool, though, in a way, to play devil's advocate. I mean, let's look at it this way. Let's say that, like, the PGR, moving into the final 2 S tiers, was kind of like, since you're a teacher and I was a teacher, let's use a school analogy. Up until that point, we had, teachers going into final grades before the final exam. You start on the report cards. You start writing the notes for the report cards. You start, writing like about what the kid was doing for the parents to accommodate. Because like, I don't know about you where you're teaching or whatever, but there was a lot of times where I had to write like a little paragraph, not just a letter grade. So you can't do that before the final exam, So you have to do that in advance. So it was kind of cool in a way because you look at it like, hey, this is their progress up through the term, and this is what we're all writing our little blurb about for the report card. And bam, the final grade comes out because they aced the exam. But like, it's pretty safe to say that if you haven't done your homework all term, you're not going to ace the exam, so you can make assumptions, But like some of these players went out there, didn't do a lot, aced the exam, and found their way in the top 50. And that also, in its own way, is super cool.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. I mean, like, definitely, like, CO last year was not at the end of a season, but more so in, like, the middle or the beginning, kind of the summer of Smash. And last year in CO, it was, like, the tournament that never happened, right? Like, everybody was losing. Palutena beat Zero, Prince Ramen, crazy stuff, crazy. Just whack, right? This year, not too much, but also, like, there were a lot of assumptions going in, like, okay, this person's top 10, this person's top 10, or, Anti's gonna make his return, just whatever, right? Things that people want to have happen, and then all these other things happened instead, and some of it was unforeseeable, right? Like, the biggest thing that I'm glad happened is that Ken top-8'd. Because what we did as well for this PGR was we actually talked to a bunch of top players. Practical Task and I had group DMs with Zero, Naruto, Ally, Mr. R, Issa and MVD because they were Panda, just to talk about, like, hey, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, what do you think? Oh, well, I don't think, or maybe, oh, have you tried this? Okay, cool. Because again, it caters to them at the end of the day, and we want to be fair. So one of the things that, not going into it too much, but, the whole placements and set counts bit, the placements, what we did was we took everybody's 4 best tournaments, and then after that, the 5th, 6th, and so on, decreased in weight by 10%. So there was, like, this, like, steady decline. Why did you guys do that? Well, for people that just go to everything and get 25th and 17th, that impact is lessened. And for the people who go to maybe 4 or 5 things, they're still going to have all their stuff counted. But again, like, it's a kind of like a law of diminishing returns. And so we saw that really put people where they needed to be, for example, like Rich Brown, who went to over 10 tournaments, but did kind of mediocre. And that's why he got 39th, right? Otherwise, he would have been higher. Because after one point, when we're not a situated league, when we don't have, like, everybody entering the same events all the time, if you just go to more things, like, you're naturally going to rise your placement score, regardless, right? So we had all these conversations with the top players and whatnot to see what they thought. Naira making the argument, like, I traveled to all these things, I deserve all those extra points. I made those efforts. And it's like, yeah, you're right. So we're not going to just take your top 4 and dish out the rest. We're going to take your top 4 and then steadily depress the rest.
Right, and I think that was very smart, in a way. Again, like, you can kind of see the education background here, because, like, what's the thing? It's like, when you average all the test scores, it's
normalize.
Like, yeah. So, like, that's almost the same thing. You can kind of see the education background here.
Yeah.
And it's all grading. You're ranking people, you're grading them. So what better than to have a teacher?
And not everybody's taking the same test.
Smashers.
And the problem thing is that not everybody's taking the same test. Not everyone's taking the same amount of tests. Not everyone's taking the same subject test. So it's even wackier, like, and that's the crazy part. But the other thing, too, is that when we talk to these top 10 players, the last question we had for all of them was, where would you put Ken right now in the world? All of them.
Why would you ask that question, first of all?
X Factor.
I know why, but the people shouldn't.
Well, okay, so Ken is a god, but Ken has had the issue of attendance and also of having unfortunate, circumstance at an attendance. Like, not anytime, but he's gone maybe outside the U.S. a couple times. And
once.
Yeah,
once. He went to EVO 2016, and that was it.
He went to Frostbite.
No. I meant, like, up until this season.
Oh, okay, yeah. He went last season, and he's had these showings of brilliance that are like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Well, he dominated Japan. He was
no. I mean outside, right?
Right.
Because you have to assume that
that's
Smashers.
The story.
Yeah. So the story is like, yo, he's so good in Japan. It's like, well, if you're good in Japan, you must be godlike. But then he came here, didn't make the best impression first time around. I got 33rd, right, through a NIFO donation. One shot, didn't make it. It's okay. But again, for Smashers in America, like, if you're not top 8, like, they don't know who you are. So, amazing in Japan. Couldn't prove it over here. Went to Frostbite, did well as well.
He got, like, 9th, I think.
Yeah.
I'm gonna double check.
He got top 8 or 9th. But with Ken, it was this, like, he's so good. Then Leo goes over there. oh my god, Game 5, like, he's so good.
Ken got 13th at EVO 2016.
Oh, did he? I thought he got 30. Maybe it's Kirihara that got 33rd. Yeah, it was Kirihara. But again, you have this situation where, like, someone really far away, Leo, right? Mr. R gets bamboozled by Leo. He tells everybody he's top 3 in the world. People are like, Mr. R, you're washed up. Now he's top 2. But nobody could know that until he competed here. So once he won Zero Saga, it was like, all right, Leo, I'm your fan. So with Ken, it's kind of been the same phenomenon.
Ken got 17th at Frostbite.
Damn, yeah. So again, there's this phenomenon of, like, they're so amazing where they are, and the region's hard, but they come here and they underperform because of so many things. Seeding, pools, pressure, like, all this stuff. So we were asking all the top 10 players, where would you put Ken? Because before CEO, Ken was in, like, the low 20s because he didn't have anything aside from some placements from the sagas and other stuff like that. And they were all like, he's top 10. He's top 10. He plays like a top 10 player. He plays like a top 10 player. What about Kirihara? They said the same thing. He plays like a top 10 player. And it's like, damn. You know, we can't just give him a certain placing just because they think that. And so he got top 8 at CEO, and it's like, boom, it made all the numbers go up. So that was awesome to have Ken do what he did at 16th this season. But again, like, talking to these top players, getting information, getting their perspective, factoring them in, and, like, to really conclude before we get into, like, the bloopers part of the PGR, because there were plenty. A PGR isn't what it is if it wasn't for the feedback that we took in. And that is very hard to understate or overstate. Feedback is so valuable, and it's so, like...
And it's not, it's like from all levels. Like,
from everything.
From the top players, to the top leaders, to the Reddit commenters, to the tweets, to everything.
To somebody saying the list is trash, to narrow messaging me like, hey, this was really great, I liked how you did this and that. Everything in between, all of that is important because it's what it's called is interest. And Trent eSports, like, and I, like, talked a little bit talked a lot actually about this, like, going in from last season to this season, about how I should take in what people say and why they say it. And, like, when someone says this list is trash, first of all, like we say, they acknowledge that it's a list. So we're doing well, okay? If we release top 10 and it's got like 3 retweets and 10 likes, that is shambolic. Okay, like, that is
the buzzword.
That is literally shambolic. Okay, like, we could have worked hard, involved like multivariable calculus, and made like everything whatever. And if it gets 2 retweets and 10 likes, that is shambolic. But the fact that it gets interest means that people acknowledge it is real, right? And so the people who say it's trash, like, awesome. Like, I have to find out why it's trash. If they can't tell me after that, then it's like, okay, that's a non-opinion. But again, it's so important, you know? You can't just, like, not take what they say as valid just because you don't agree with it. But everything we got was from the feedback. If you look at the first player card to now, it's night and day. It's literally night and day. Like, people last time were like, hey, I want to know where they were last season to this season. Can you guys do that? Hey, I want to know where they're from. Can you guys do that? And not just put, like, USA. Hey, I want to know their secondaries, man. Like, not all players are solo mains. Hey, can you show their set count between the PGR? Hey, can you show their set count between the top 10? Hey.
That's actually really interesting because you can look at sort of the evolution of the game, too. Because in Season 1, almost everybody was a solo main. And there were very few people who mained multiple characters. I think Anti was, like, the first notable player to play more than one character.
Reliably,
so Anti sort of created that. But now it's you have to. You absolutely have to. So
Mr. R has a cloud. Mr. R has a cloud.
Of the game.
Yeah,
right.
like Mr. R has a cloud, and he would never have done that. And now he actually uses a cloud reliably. The first instances at Big House 6 where he took out Debuzz with cloud, big deal. At Royal Flush where he took out Zero with the reset with cloud, big deal. But classically, he was the Sheik solo main. So he has realized that she can only get him to top 8, but he needs to adapt in top 8, because then you have stuff that happens at Civil War where Hikaru kills him at 70. You know,
we're starting to get into, like, melee territory here, because now it sounds like almost like Music
full
King talking
optimization.
About yeah, where he's like,
Larry
my
with
marks for
Donkey
top
Kong.
8 and my Sheiks for the bracket. You know?
Yeah. Like Debuzz formed his Olimar pretty early, and that's really, like, from Brawl as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, Zero has Lucina and Sheik. I mean, that's interesting. Like,
And Cloud.
yeah, and
His Cloud has been putting in work, especially recently.
Yeah, MK-Leo, 3 characters, all deadly, Marth, Cloud, and Meta Knight. Like, all that stuff, right? People are like, yo, we want to see this, we want to see that, we want to see this. Now the player card is this, like, you can talk for an hour about their player card. 3 S-tier placings, their best ones. 3 A-tier placings, their best ones. Their set count against the top 50, their set count against the top 10. Their X factor, their overall score, their rise and fall, their notable wins, and their secondaries. For that, you can go forever. And it's really funny because people are like, from the 41 through 50 notable wins, you can tell who the top 10 are, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like a fucking detective now and I work for CSI. And it's like, congratulations.
Dude,
like,
no, that's awesome though. Like,
no,
you
it
make
was fun.
Like, not super obvious.
Well, first of all, okay, going into any PGR season, half of the top 10's already spoiled because you're going to have Zero, Nairo, DeBuzz, Ally, Larry Lure, and MK-Leo. So that's 6 already, right?
And Nairo.
And Nairo.
And
so
Nairo.
It's almost 7. Always going to be in the top 10. Abadongo and Void and Mr. R are probably the most at risk all the time because, again, like, they have trouble catching up sometimes, but they're still ahead of the pack. But for the most part, it's like, okay, what surprise are we going to do for the top 10, right? And so when we, like, the biggest surprises people to see were Tweak not being confirmed top 10, Captain Zack being confirmed top 10, Como being confirmed top 10, Abadongo being confirmed top 10 because he had a shaky season. And they figured it out through, like, the 41 through 50 because Wadi...
But, like, keep in mind that, like, that's also for the fans because you make it obvious enough that enough people can figure it out, but not too obvious, so that way people, when they figure it out, they feel like they've done something cool.
Oh, yeah. And it was intentional. I had someone message me like, hey, man, I think it was a poor design choice to put the top 10 wins because you could figure it out that when Wadi had 2 sets on the top 10 and he had beaten Captain Zack twice, it's Captain Zack's top 10. So you should probably take a look at that. And I was like, okay, like, motherfucker, how do you show from 41 through 50 any notoriety aside from some like 25th and 17th placings other than the fact that they have wins on the top 10? And that's what people don't understand. Like, it's really hard for 41 through 50 to gain any legitimacy.
I think everyone just didn't get how brilliant that was. Not only do you show good data, but you also get people really involved in the PGR because everyone wants to know it. It's information they don't have, and then they feel like hot shit when they figure it out. And
it was great.
Good for you.
It was great. Someone was like, they tagged me and they're like, yo, I figured it out, man. Like, this is the top 10. I was like, yeah. But order matters, and until we say that, you're just going to be standing here. So it's like, you know...
And then they're like...
yeah, like, it doesn't matter. Like, yes, Captain Zack is top 10, but until Friday, you didn't know that he was 7th. And so, who cares, right? Like, that's that. And
my god, did you see... That was probably my favorite tweet of all time. Did you see Larry's response to the PGR?
No.
Oh my god.
Or
continue on your thing. Let me find it.
Well, something that's funny is that Larry Lure, on all 3 seasons, his S factor has put him at 7.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I didn't want to mistweeted it or talk about it or whatever. But yeah,
it's
like,
funny.
Every single time, his X factor has put him at 7.
Yeah, so the X factor, for, again, anybody that doesn't know, it's your objective minus your subjective score given by the panel. So if you're like 10th in the world by data and you have an X factor of +2, that means people think you should be 8th, right? But again, they're overrating you. If you have an X factor -2, then you'd be 12th
so
in their minds.
He tweeted out on July 7th saying, my X factor always places me at 7th. Well, by the way, you should look at this terrible card. Oh my god.
This first one?
Sorry. Yeah, because if you guys want to see what all the PGR, like how far we've gone, like...
Far we've come. It's like you know in Google and like eBay and all those like, you know, tech giants in the beginning had really ugly logos and they were just kind of like using all sorts of different techniques like shading and 3D, and then now it's all sleek and flat. That's kind of what happened. We had a really ugly middle school phase.
Yeah, he was 7th in season 1 and he had an X factor of 0. Then he was 5th with an X factor of -2. And then he was 6th with an X factor of -1. So everyone just thinks he should always be 7th in the world, no matter what.
Yeah, and that's cool, you know. And I really love, like, I guess PGR, like, I don't know, trivia. It's really funny. Oh, and the other thing that I really enjoyed doing before we get into the bloopers was Area 51.
Right.
Area 51 was a really funny idea that I was talking with Alan about, and I was like, listen, dude. And the other piece of feedback is that people want this list to go to 100. It won't happen. I'll get into that
Right,
another day.
we already talked about.
I don't care. Not interested. But HMs are, kind of important. Like, it sucks to, like, almost make it but never get recognized. But then the guy who got 50th gets all the credit. So, what we did is we actually had, since it was automated, we had enough people to make an HM, but no one was statistically significant enough, like, to have a gap to be like, okay, this person's 51, this person's 52. So we just made an Area 51, where everybody's 51, and they all get that one shout out. And it was Wrath, Shoyo James, Tyrant, K9, and Trella, actually. And it was really cool to just sort of do that and give them like a nice highlight, because they are amazing, and that's what everybody knows. It's like Trella, if he ever competes again, he's amazing. I mean, he beat Leo like when he was in Texas, like twice. Amazing.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna cut you off there. We're running a little late. We're almost to an hour of recording, so let's move into the production gaffes. Talk about that. Do the run back and get out of here.
Cool. So, sorry, I got ahead of myself, but yeah, Area 51, fun stuff. But like every PGR, I won't get into it too much because of optics. So just assume that it was perfect behind the scenes. But on this show, no, it was not. It was not. It was not. On this show, we've talked about how things have completely not happened, right? Some have been public, some have not been. Ally missed his flight to the Civil War. How hilarious. Right. Many things that you never knew almost happened, didn't happen, etc. Like, it happens every PGR. And it happened this one. And let's just say that Sage is gonna be probably my best man at my wedding. And, like, he's a god. Alright? He's a god. I'll probably talk about it when it's not relevant anymore, but yeah, I mean, with so many moving pieces, with a video, with an article, with D1 voicing, which by the way, shout out to D1, what a gentleman, loved working with him.
Yeah, basically, long story short, there's a lot of times, pretty much at every PGR, if I remember correctly, where, like, the PGR almost didn't happen, so...
Well, the thing is that here's the thing, because it did happen every time, in the numbers sense, but communicating it to everybody in terms of the showcasing we have to do and showboating, that's hard, because the list is done. The night CEO ended with grand finals, the list was done. We just put in the numbers, put in the placements, this is it. But the 50 articles, I wrote the script for the videos. It turned out to be over 10,000 words, so 25 pages of just writing how good people are at a party game. Very hard, very exhaustive, on top of a grad school load. But 50 articles, 50 pictures, 50, like, all these things, right? It's hard. And so there's gaps, and there's things, and I purposely did not set a release time for the videos on the days that we set the videos, because Smashers, if you give them a time and you're late, you are heckled. If you say venue opens at 3 and it's 3:01, then you got JJ Rocket subtweeting you forever.
Done.
You're over. That's it. And so the best defense was just saying, all right, it releases on July 7th. That's it. And it's like, what time? July 7th, man.
We'll figure it out.
Afternoon. It's afternoon somewhere. All right. And so,
so give us your top 3 gaps of PGR season 3.
Okay. Top 3. Okay. First one. Let's go and least gaff to most gaff. So least gaff. Let's see. Least gaff. Okay. Typos and articles, whatever, that's a given, so that's the third one. They happen every now and then, whatever. Like, we get a name wrong, like, dude, fucking just DM us. You don't have to be the first tweet on the post. Like, that's so obnoxious. I know people gain value out of that, but it's like, dude, you're just
gain value out of it.
Just DM us.
Okay, number 2?
Who had the worst picture? We did a really great job with pictures this year. I loved a lot of the pictures. I don't think there's a gaff on pictures. First season, Naru's picture, if you haven't seen it, is a travesty. But I can't think of one. Second one. Okay, I'll just make it 2 and 1. Okay, so Captain Zach. Alright, cause this rustled Vayseth's jimmies. But, okay, let's just say
I was like, I didn't want to bring it up, but I'm glad you are.
Yeah, whatever. So, first of all, in notable victories, Komurkiri is there. We had famously and we said it ourselves that we weren't going to count it, and we didn't. But it snuck into the notable victories because it was technically a tournament victory, but it didn't count for set count, and it got on his notable victory, so that sparked a lot of buzz about like, wait, we thought he didn't beat him, blah blah blah. The other thing is that the .9 clip from Genesis was on the video for Captain Zach's like highlight of him.
You idiot!
Of him walloping. Okay, hold on. Of him walloping.
How is that a good idea? How is that a good idea?
Of him walloping Komori Kiri at 90% of the normal knockback in the tournament game. So, let's just say that I did not see every clip that was chosen for every player because it's a thing called delegation. So the person who won't be named who gathered all the VODs used it, and I didn't think they would because I trusted them with their good judgment because they did really well the entire PGR, picking the best VODs. But for some reason, they picked this one, and it just set a lot of Japan ablaze because, like, the .9 gate is very sensitive for them, of course. It happened to one of their
Yeah.
own. And
Even today, just in case people don't know, I think a lot of us in the U.S. have made it into this sort of meme. Bear doesn't think it's as funny as Suar does.
dude,
he
the
takes
easiest-
it super personally.
easiest way to
And
ruin
he's
Bear's
really-
day is just say
yeah.
.9. Like, just,
Yeah,
that's it, man.
like,
That's it. That's all you need.
It's
That's
not
his-
funny to him. It's a huge deal, and it's super touchy subject.
It's the
Japan.
touchiest. It's so touchy.
In Japan, it's a huge touchy subject, and nobody likes talking about it. And especially culturally in Japan, when there's something like that, you just sort of like
It's taboo. It's literally taboo.
you just don't talk about it. And Japan kind of went notably upset when they saw the top 10 video, and
totally
I messaged
justified.
Suar, and I was like,
Totally.
this is unacceptable.
So, shit happens, alright? Like, we don't have the budget of, like, a major motion picture association. We don't have, like, a room of editors. And it snuck by, alright? It could have been worse, but it happened.
Yeah,
and
so
it was
that was the
funny.
biggest gaffe, possibly, that nobody noticed.
Yeah.
But some people did.
And
That was
it's
number one.
like-
If you were to put number two, I guess it would be Locust as American was number two.
Oh,
Number
yeah,
three
okay,
was
okay,
messing
yeah,
up
yeah.
people's names in the articles, which can be edited.
Okay, that was
You know,
AC.
like-
Okay. Let's be fair. AC has a double Hispanic
No,
hyphenated
it's
last
fine. We
name.
talked about it earlier in the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are like the levels where like the Captain Zach one was definitely pretty bad. Then you have Fallen getting like wins wrong for the second season in a row, I think, and Locust being American. So that's like that level of gaff. And then
So-
you had like just random spelling or whatever errors in the articles that can just be fixed instantly. So
Yeah, Locust's player card shows him British Columbia, Canada, but in the outro for his video, they accidentally put the American flag. So some of the gaffes aren't too gaffy, like it's in this one aspect of the PGR, but a lot of it can be fixed for the final presentation. So for example, like for the website, when you look at this later down the road, like you won't find these errors anymore. So that's cool. Yay for editing. But yeah, that's all really. I mean, the Captain Zach one was really funny, but awful at the same time.
It's funny looking back at it. It definitely wasn't funny when it was happening.
It'll get funnier each and every year we pass it.
Right, for us, like, we can look at it because it definitely wasn't.
That was the worst
intentional.
moment for a lot of people's lives. Like that, almost
Right.
ended Komori Kiri's competitive career. It did for like a week.
It almost ended Bear's career. like,
It did.
like all of us were upset. I still have not watched that top 8 because I left the venue. I was just devastated. Like I couldn't do that, and
YOLO,
like
dude.
I was still living that moment for months and months and months. Like actually, like this is like the one time I will acknowledge Champ's Ego account on Twitter. Which, if you haven't seen it, it's like somebody made a Champ Ego account, which is kind of like, I don't know, like a 2GG fans like greatest friend, and also like anybody who for some reason wants to tear down 2GG is kind of like, this must be like what they're actually thinking. And when point 9 happened, there's a picture of Como teary-eyed looking distraught into the camera lens with me and Bear in front of him, and it says Champ's Ego, January 25th, when you realize that everything except 2GG sucks. And like nobody's really talked about it since then, but like this is the level it is in America. It's like a meme,
Yeah.
In Japan, it caused a whole lot of problems. So
It is, yeah. But, you know, you're from Team Dignatus, right? And you want to pick up someone in Smash, you're watching top 8, you see that clip, you have no idea. You have no idea that was basically,
zero.
like,
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
So, it's gaff and it's not a gaff. But, yeah. Anyways, that's pretty much it. If you find a typo or anything, just DM us. Like, just don't be that person, but just whatever. It'll still happen anyways, but just... Until you put something out to be critiqued by the public, you won't understand. But if you put something out to be critiqued, it's going to get critiqued. So whatever, you have to kind of accept it. And I've learned that lesson, so I take it on stride.
For sure.
But the last thing is the runback. So what's the question for
and really quickly, you could just say, since you referenced it earlier and we don't want to leave any inconsistencies, that the death of Yahoo eSports really kind of hurt this year.
Oh, yeah. Really quick.
Esports articles written, so moment of silence for the great people over at Yahoo Esports, and we really missed you this year, and we hope that somebody steps up.
Yeah,
and, helps
one of the biggest
notoriety out there.
One of the biggest things I want to stress is like when you see PGR type stuff, 2GG circuit type stuff, like retweet it, share it, send it to your mom, send it on Facebook, even if you don't use Facebook, because we're at a really big kind of disadvantage right now with not having a major publication by brand name reference what we do. It all gets lost. Like, Kotaku referenced 2GG Arms Saga because Soul won with Arms, and that's big now for Arms and stuff. Like, we don't have that anymore. ESPN's very weird and nitpicky with certain weird things. They covered this, but not that, and even then, it has to be, like, kind of in accordance to with their agenda. So, you know, the PGR doesn't have value if it doesn't gain traction outside the community, so always share it. But anyways, You can go ahead and do the run back.
Oh, yeah. It's time for the run back.
Run back.
It'd be really funny if we don't get the sound clip, so like we can tell just how like terrible it sounds for us here when we're recording it. It sounds way better. But anyway, we got a message quite a while ago on Gmail, and this is finally an opportunity for us to talk about it since we have just Suar here and no Sage. So this is a question for you by Jack Goldberg, Jack the Fence Goldberg. He writes, "Hey guys, this is Jack Fence Goldberg from CT. And yes, I have met you a couple times at UG Suar way back when."
I hate when they do this, because I don't know who the fuck I meet, and it creeps me out, but whatever, go on.
Dude, shout-outs to that. Thank you. Anyway, he writes, "I was wondering, logistic questions for the PGR placing. Since you have to play almost double the sets in losers as you do," he says in doubles, but I'm assuming that he means in winners. "Would the most advantageous way to get high on the PGR be to drop down into losers as soon as possible, then win the tournament? Just something I was randomly thinking about."
So, very good deduction there. That would make sense in a lot of instances. You're winning more sets, you're in losers, you're tearing through, you go through the gyms, the mid-level players eventually take out top players and win the tournament. The way that things are done this time around, everyone's set score, right, is deeply impacted by what they did in the tournament. So if you're first place in winners and you stay in winners and some dude drops into losers round 1 like Larry and makes it to grand finals against you and you beat them, you in a way sort of inherit all the level up that they got, and if you beat them, your set score reflects that. So it's kind of hard to illustrate, but essentially, like, you know, if you are a level 1, you know, whatever, wizard, sorcerer, knight, and you go into a level 1000 dungeon, and you somehow make it out, you get that level up in accordance, right? But if you go to a commensurable dungeon for your level or whatever, and you beat it, then you'll get, you know, less. And so, for the other person, they have a set score that greatly, dramatically improves. Their placement score is going to be the same, second or third, but their set score like takes into account all those sets they won. But if they lose against first, then that means that first is still better than them, and that they, in a sense, not through Inuit logic, but they still had the greater value of set score that overwhelmed yours, even though you had a great one. And you see that in tournament. Like, even though Larry makes a great run, and he gets to the moment, right, and he loses, the person he beat, like, is still amazing. He's that much more amazing for it. So,
well, like, we also need to keep in mind that these run back stories are huge and still talked about to this day. Like, Mango largely got his start by running that legendary losers runback, right?
Yeah.
Where he beat all these guys with Puff and won the tournament. And then you look at Big House 5, where you have Zero losing in winners for the first time, then coming up to me saying he wants to quit, and he's just not feeling it, and me going, yo, dude, let's put you in this room, let's get you some water, let's chill, let's finish out the tournament, and losers bracket runs and stories and think this, that, or another thing. But, like, let's not always talk about, if you want to do this to farm wins or whatever, here's the problem. Generally, anybody who's in the top knows how hard it is, especially in Smash
It doesn't work that way.
to win a tournament from losers. It rarely happens. And if it happens, it's most often they've made it to winners finals and one of those make it. You know what I'm saying? Like, somebody losing really early and coming all the way back, that's pretty rare for that to actually happen. And especially if you're a top player in Smash 4, people are hungry for upsets. So the moment you're upset, that's going to be out there. And people are going to be out for blood because they want the same... Like, everybody talks about... is it Ludi? What is his name? I can't... Latai. All the time, because he's the one who knocked Zero out of Civil War, you know? And, like, everyone talks about... And they want to be that guy because that guy blew up because he beat Zero. And in this game, anybody can do that at any given day, you know? So it's really not a good idea for your tournament history to sort of sandbag for the tournament in the tournament.
Yeah, and the math goes to show, like, when they do get those legendary runbacks, if they overwhelm the person who was in winners finals, that means that their set score is greater than them. All of a sudden, when they beat them, it's going to be that much greater as well, because the person who got second had beaten everybody in winners, and their set score had improved. And then when you beat them, you basically, like, eat them up, right? Like a cell, like eating another cell. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So, yeah, I mean, your question kind of calls to, like, not a misconception, but kind of like a logical fallacy. Where, like, oh, why don't you just go into losers? Well, no one's ever done that except for, like, 2 people successfully.
And, like, not on purpose either, because, like we said, it'd be a crazy idea, especially in Smash 4, where the game is volatile and
2
anyone
stocks,
can lose.
2 out of 3, it's just not going to happen. Like,
right, going into losers at 2 out of 3. Oh my god, like if you go to, like, that's the thing, if you go into losers right away, you're in losers at 2 out of 3, and literally anything can happen.
Yeah, stage spike, planking, fucking me swordsman, anything.
That's why Evo's going to be hype.
Yeah,
that's why
Evo's
going to be
crazy.
hype. But yeah, actually, that's how we should wrap up the show. So first of all, thank you for listening every single week. You can get at us at Gmail at thesetcount@gmail.com or message us at thesetcount on Twitter. Our DMs are open. Other than that, the only thing that we have to say is watch Evo. As we talked about last week. Yeah, as we talked about last week, it'll probably be the only time that Smash 4 will be in the Evo arena. So go to Evo if you can, but if you can't go to spectate, at least watch it from the safety of your home. And
yeah, it's a big deal, everyone. Like, It's a big deal, and we'll have a lot to talk about next time about it. But
everyone always asks us, like, what they can do for the community. Let me tell you what you can do. Like and retweet and
everything,
blog,
anything.
Everything
like a GIF,
that comes from Smash 4.
A GIF
just smash that button.
A Twitch clip or a GIF of a hand warmer, like, retweet it, share it, anything. Make an article, write an article, make a blog for every set. Do something.
Just get it all out there. Like, this is the time where everybody around the world in esports pays careful attention to fighting games. Because this is the one time where fighting games are on the level of some of the other multi-million-dollar esports. So everyone is watching. Everyone will be there who's anyone, or they'll be watching. So make sure that our game stands out. Because, as we discussed last time, it's not very likely that our game will get a chance in the arena again, at least in its current iteration. Maybe if there's a Smash 5 or a port, but at least for the one for Wii U, we discussed our points and said that this will probably be it. So make sure that our community gets out there, gets some exposure, make sure that we break new records. I don't think we've actually had a tournament that has beaten Genesis 3 in numbers. This will be the first one. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. It'll be the first time Smash 4 breaks 100k viewership, hopefully with the time slot. I would almost want to say that it's a no-brainer, but I don't want to jinx it. But yeah, it's big. So yeah, thanks again to everybody who worked on the PGR, who enjoyed the PGR, and everyone who likes the set count. We appreciate your feedback too. You can yell at Suar about whatever you want, whenever you want, because he's on this podcast. So use your ability to do so. So watch Evo, and this has been MVG Vayseth.
Yeah, I'm Panda Global Suar. And to sign us off like Sage does, you can follow us on Twitter at the set count. You can email us at the setcount@gmail.com. We'll be posting on Reddit for the podcast upload. It'll be on YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn, all the regular podcast platforms, and SoundCloud. So you'll see that, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, I just realized that we're pretty terrible without Sage, because we just did that twice.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Bye.
Come